Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Cassandra Salazar, and I'm a Student Affairs Specialist with SAO. Today, I just wanted to take a moment and chat with you all about some of the updates for this fall. I know this is a really new time for all of us, and we're all navigating this space. And I know that we want our student organizations to stay active, but we just want to know what that looks like. So today I'm going to cover this. If you all have any questions during this chat, please feel free. This is very casual. This is just me informing you. And then at the end, I will reserve some time to answer your questions. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the SAO office is here as a resource. So we will have continuous advisor trainings, but other good resources to keep up to date with all of the changes would be the bulletin, which is sent out every 2 weeks to our presidents and advisors. We also are posting updates on our social media accounts, and we also have an FAQ tab on the SAO website. So I encourage you all to look through that. And as always, our regular student regulations always apply, and you can find that on the student handbook on Boilerlink. So right now we are having virtual and in-person events. As always, we do require an activity planning form at least 2 weeks prior to the event. Now, with virtual events, we are now asking that you also submit an activity planning form. We can be a little bit more flexible with that, so it doesn't have to be submitted 2 weeks in advance for virtual, but for in-person events, we must have the activity planning form at least 2 weeks prior. And I really want to really express how important it is that you do have to submit an activity planning form for all virtual and in-person events and activities. So now I want to talk about what in-person events look like this fall semester. We do have some guidelines that we need to follow. First one is all in-person events are max 50 people per event. You can request an exception if you have a department back you up, but without the exception, it's 50 people. It must be on campus. There is no organized travel. You can have food at your events. I know that's a really big question, and I know that's a really big part of a lot of organizations and events. But there are some guidelines with that as well. So there's no more of that buffet style, the Chipotle, make your own bowl. There's no more, let's order a lot of pizzas and everyone grab a few slices. Food now has to be individually wrapped, and it has to be grab and go style. And there's no self-prepared food. So you can't be, making a big cake for everyone and everyone grab a small slice before the meeting. So another guideline about in-person events is tabling. So I mentioned that there is a 50-person limit on events, but with tabling, we just don't want 50 people there at one time. So you want to make sure you're controlling that. But if you have a tabling event going on for multiple hours, it is okay if you have more than 50 people total in the duration of the entire event. But we just want to make sure there is not more than 50 people there at the same time. If you are handing out items, you do need to wear gloves, and gloves must be changed every 30 minutes. Of course, all Protect Purdue guidelines must be followed at all activities and events. And I do want to go back to food at events. As of 2 days ago, we have a new update, and so if you're having food at your events, you can only have your mask off for 15 minutes total, and everyone has to be facing the same way while they're eating. So we want to make sure we are following that. With the new Protect Purdue guidelines and with these events, we have now implemented mandatory attendance at all events. And the way that will work is the organization hosting an event will have to have the CheckIn App, and they receive an event code once their activity planning form is approved. You'll enter that code on the app, and each person that is attending your event, and this includes members that are hosting the event, must check in with the app. And each person has an individualized QR code, and it is simply just taking the picture for a quick check-in. It is super important that we know where everyone's at and when they were there. So we're constantly pulling this report, and it's really important that you are all taking attendance. Another guideline that we need to follow this semester is we have no external visitors. So there's no speakers coming on campus anymore. There's not any entertainers coming on campus. And that's just for the safety of our students. I know this is a time that it's kind of difficult and we've had to change the ways we do things, but truly this is just for the safety of everyone. We do want students to still have in-person events, but we just want them to be safe. The other guideline we need to follow is no shared equipment. So, for example, volleyball, right? So we can't have everyone sharing that same volleyball. Or if you're playing badminton, we can't be sharing the rackets. So everyone has to have their own equipment. Let's see what else I want to talk about. Does anyone have any questions right now about anything?
Hi, I have a question. My name is Juan Robles. He, him, his pronouns, and I work at the Latino Cultural Center. So a question that I have for you, Cassandra, is when it comes to virtual events, I know you mentioned how we have to fill out an APF form, or student orgs have to fill out an APF form. Is this for all events, like every single event? And does that include like meetings and things like that?
Yep, so the general rule is just an activity planning form needs to be in our system for absolutely everything. Even if it is only 3 people meeting up and it's members only, those internal meetings, we need an activity planning form for absolutely everything. Great question.
And just a follow-up question to that as well.
Yeah.
If a student organization is co-sponsoring an event with the units, do they also have to fill out an event form or an APF form, even if it's not them that's organizing it?
So if a student org is truly co-hosting with a department, a cultural center, anyone like that, if they're truly using their funds, their resources, and they're going to put their name on it, they do need to submit an activity planning form. If they're really just putting their name on it, they can contact us. But if they are truly co-hosting, they do need to submit an activity planning form for that. I do want to share a quick hack, you could call it. If your organization has reoccurring meetings, like bi-weekly meetings at the same people, same kind of business, you actually can submit only one activity planning form and just list the multiple dates on there. So that saves you all a lot of time. Great question. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. So you mentioned about food at events. Can my organization still do a skip a meal type event where we would work with, you know, an off-campus location? So I know how that relates into, you mentioned no off-campus travel. So I'm just wondering the guidelines around that.
Sure. So skip a meals are allowed, and a skip a meal is when a student organization would partner with a local coffee shop and say, hey, everyone that gives them this flyer or uses this code will take X percentage of the total sales and they'll donate that to our student org. That is allowed as long as the student org is not there giving out that flyer, as long as they're not going as an organization. If they go on their own to buy a cup of coffee or whatever, that is fine, because that is personal business, not the organization going. But yes, that is allowed. We just want to make sure there's not any organized travel and they're not there promoting their event. And that is a really good way to fundraise right now. That would be kind of more flexible because you can't be leaving campus to organize things like that.
So I actually have a different question, but I want to clarify something you just said. You said no organized travel. So I was an advisor previously for a group, and I know that I saw on their group chat, which I'm not going to throw them completely under the bus, but I mean, they plan one of those and then they say, hey, who wants to go together, like unofficially? Like what does organized travel mean, I guess is what
right. So I know a lot of, right, it's very normal that organization members, also friends,
course.
a part of the organization. But if you are using your organization's communication channel, the GroupMe, the Slack, that is organization business. If you are going to use that communication channel and you are organizing with other members, hey, let's go to this event, it's organized travel, and that is not allowed.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that extend to like service learning opportunities or like volunteering? So if a student org wants to go to the animal shelter to walk dogs, do they still have to fill out an APF form?
So actually that is not allowed because all activities have to be on campus. So you can't volunteer off campus at all. If you still want to continue with volunteer opportunities for your organization, you can contact one of us and we can really help you find volunteer opportunities on campus. But yeah, we can't be going to like the animal shelters, Habitat for Humanity, things like that. So everything has to be done on campus. Great question.
Thank you.
So the other question I had, and I'm sorry if I missed something that tells me that this is not the right place to ask for it, but I'm curious for organizations, I guess in this case, Greek organizations, but I'm assuming they still fall under the same umbrella of having to report events. What are any policies or things to keep in mind for off-campus guests? Like how does that work in events? Is that treated just the same as any guest that's there? How does that work?
Great question. So FSCL orgs are still student organizations and still have to follow SAO guidelines, and there are no external visitors at the moment.
Hi, Cassandra. Could you speak a little bit more on what is considered off-campus versus on-campus?
Sure. So I think that's a great question because I think some people, they think anything on Chauncey Hill is on campus. But if Purdue does not own the building, it is off campus. So for example, I know I get a lot of questions about St. Thomas because a lot of student orgs do have events there. St. Thomas is not owned by the university, therefore it is off campus. So we can't have any organized travel there or events going on.
But can students still go there for like service?
Yep, so if a student decides to go there for mass, they can go individually on their own because that's their personal business, right? Like that's not them acting as an organization member. Great question.
So I was gonna say a follow-up from mine, but then kind of grabbing onto a piece that Allison just said. So for a formal event, for a formally recognized event, and I don't know if that means on campus and off campus can never be formal, but for a formally recognized event that they put a thing for, that's where you can't have off campus guests, or you just, if you're found to be hosting off campus guests for any kind of business, then or any kind of association, then are you in trouble?
So if we are aware that any of these guidelines are broken, we will start an investigation and look into more, get into all the details because it's really hard to see exactly the entire story based on a picture or from someone else. So we would look into that.
Okay. But again, these are just for formal, these are just for recognized events or for any kind of gathering of sorts? Any
kind of gathering. So even those like casual biweekly meetings happen on campus and you need to submit activity planning form. Does that?
So, but that's my thing. What if it's off campus?
They can't be off campus. So all activities and events, like all of them, no matter how big, how small, if it's internal, only like, hey, 3 of us are going to go meet at a local coffee shop to organize this online fundraiser. That can't happen.
Okay.
If you're doing any organization business, it needs to be on campus.
Okay.
Yep, and that includes like an advisor. If you contacted one of your org members and said, hey, let's meet, let's get dinner here, and let's plan this event for our organization off campus, we can't be having that. It has to be on campus. Because we can't control Protect Purdue guidelines at other restaurants, right? So we ask that you have it in a university-owned building on campus.
And just to clarify, this is also for virtual events, right? Like all virtual events need an APF form, regardless of how big or small. And I think this question might come up, around different circles, but why do virtual events need an APF form?
Great question. So I also want to clarify with that virtual events, you don't have to take attendance at them. But it's important for us to know, to kind of have a pulse on what's going on around campus. How many orgs are staying active? How many times are you meeting per week? That is really important for us. We want to make sure, right, because this is a really interesting time for students and for staff and faculty, but we want to see who's doing what. Any other questions?
Is tabling still allowed this semester?
Yep, so tabling is allowed. That looks a little different. So you must still take attendance, even if someone's just grabbing something. If they stop at your table, you must track them on that check-in app I mentioned earlier. You can see more than 50 people in the duration of your event, but we only want to see 50 people total there. So even though it's grab and go, or you're just, giving out information, we want to make sure we're tracking those people. But yes, that is allowed and does require an activity planning form.
If I'm unfamiliar with how to use the check-in app to track attendance, where can I find more information on that?
That's a great question. So we have an FAQ tab on the SAO website that lists instructions. Truly like step 1, do this, step 2. We have handouts, like virtual handouts on our social media accounts, and you can also drop in on office hours. So we have office hours every day from 9 to 4:30. There's always someone online. It's Zoom. You just drop in, no appointment needed, and we can walk you through anything. Any questions you might have with any of these guidelines, we'd be happy to help you. And then most of us are also accepting appointments for one-on-one if you do want to meet at a certain time with one of our specialists. Does anyone else have any questions?
I do have another FSCL-based question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Greek, and I honestly, I haven't actually asked the folks. I used to be an advisor for one of the fraternities here that I'm affiliated with actually as well, but I haven't asked them if I'm curious. Are Greeks allowed to have pledge lines this semester? And if so, how does that work?
So FSCL does have their own set of guidelines, but all fraternities, sororities, and co-ops are still student organizations. So the way it works is you will still have to submit an activity planning form for everything. We are asking that it is on campus. Mm-hmm. If they need to do something at their house, they can request that. And then FSCL is part of that approval process as well. And we take a look, like, is it under 10 people? Is it mandatory? Is it essential? But FSCL orgs are being very innovative this semester, and we're finding new ways to do things. So FSCL orgs are still fully functioning, doing the things they've always been doing. They just look different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I have another question regarding the APF form. I know that student orgs have to submit a form 2 weeks before their events, whether it be virtual or in person. Why 2 weeks? And what if they're late in submitting that form?
Great question. So we can be more flexible on virtual. So like if it's a last minute, like, hey, let's all get together on the Zoom call. If it's truly just a Zoom call, you're not spending money, you're not hiring a speaker or anything like that. That's pretty easy. We can make an exception for that. But in person, it is super important because there are multiple campus partners that are also looking at this. It's not just SAO. So it is reserving the space. It is assessing the safety. So do you need to have a campus safety meeting? If you're having food, REM needs to be involved. So there's a lot of people involved in this process, and we all need to approve this. So it's like sometimes even 5 different departments involved. And we do have a really high volume of events. We have hundreds of events actually that we're looking at right now. So we saved 2 weeks. That way we can get you an answer and you have enough time to market your event as well. Yep. Anything else I can help you all with? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. Again, SAO, as we are, you know, sharing all of these guidelines, we are not in the business of ever denying an event. We just want to make sure that you are having your events and they're safe and successful. So that's why we have a lot of these questions for you on the activity planning forms. I'm sure your students have shared with you. But if you have an idea, whether it's just like, hey, this is my goal and this is what I want to do, or you've already submitted your activity planning form, you can always schedule a one-on-one consultation meeting and we can help you plan your event. We can help you find space, navigate anything that you would need help with. We truly want you to have your events virtual or in person. And so any way we can help, we're super happy to do so. Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much all for coming today. And if you need anything else, our office is here to support you. Bye.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.